Today's episode is brought to you by Skillshare, where you can explore thousands of online classes in design, photography, business, and more. Learn from the world's best teachers and join a learning community of over 1 million creators. Learn at your own pace by watching classes on your own schedule. You can even share your work and collaborate with students around the world too. With real projects and feedback from the Skillshare community, it's like being in a real class, but on your own time. Classes can even be watched offline with the Skillshare mobile apps on both Apple and Android devices. Go to Skillshare.com and get 3 free months with the discount code UNTITLED at checkout for new customers. Thank you, Skillshare, for supporting Still Untitled. And now on with the show. Welcome to Still Untitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I am Adam.
And I'm Norm.
You know, some people have suggested that it might finally, after like 130 episodes,
Get a
be
title?
time to come up with a title for Still Untitled.
You're wrong.
I don't think so. I think that's a thing now.
I mean, Still Untitled came out of,
For better or worse.
my love, our shared love, actually. One of the first things we realized as a group was that we all love Almost Famous.
Yes.
Which was originally called Untitled. It was a story about Cameron Crowe as a kid.
God.
I have a little bit of housekeeping.
Yes.
Way back from Comic-Con, I forgot to mention this when we recorded last. The Rocketeer buckle that you received.
Yes.
I misspoke the name of the guy who gave it to you. His name is Alex Scola, and he's a listener of this podcast.
Alex. Big heart, big love.
If he's listening to the audio version, you're making a big heart right over where your heart is not.
My heart, but my Vulcan heart.
Yeah.
And it came from a friend of a friend of a friend who. So it maybe have ties to the original. It may have some connection to the buckle.
Yeah,
So-
no. It's it is exact in almost every single detail. I feel that looking at pictures I have in my archives of the original, and knowing the long and exhausting history on the RPF of the search for this buckle, and some of the scandals around it, I believe this might be one of the replica buckles. But the replica buckle is also made out of steel with an almost identical finish in every single way. Also, another RPF member who I know, Matt Munson, is a deep Rocketeer addict. And also, when he saw the buckle at the party at Comic-Con, also felt like I did that it was probably more likely one of the replicas.
Yes.
The scandalous.
He's got a good read on it.
Yes.
It's funny when you're looking at something like that, how much of that is like deep knowledge, and then how much of it is just your instinctual memory of how that comes from the knowledge.
You know, it's funny. It's both. It's totally an equal amount of both. You take you take your intuition, and I mean, which means this is rife with bias. I have a friend an old friend who's an antique dealer. And at one point, he showed me 3 artifacts, and he said, "One of these is a fake. Tell me which one." And I looked at it, and I looked at them for a while. And after a while, as I kept on looking at them and kept on sort of going over them, 2 of them just felt weirder. And I was like, "This third one is the copy." And he said, "Yes, you're right." And he said, this is this whole thing about being in this kind of business is you've got to play on your intuition in order to kind of look for those metrics that are really hard to quantify. And sometimes you're wrong, but you know, I've looked at enough pictures of that buckle up close. I will tell you that the little evergreen tree that is part of the logo on the buckle is on the one that got given to me is slightly not square. It's ever so slightly not square. And in the pictures I have on my computer, they're dead square. And that led me to wonder, this may be a post-manufacturing stamp. I'm not sure.
I mean, the antique thing is an interesting case because my parents collect, you know, post-colonial, pre-colonial and colonial era antiques and have for years. So I spent a lot of time going to antique stores and junk shops.
Yep.
Like in the South and the Northeast as a kid. And just by osmosis, you get the feel, and it's stuff that you kind of don't notice as a whole all the time, but you'll notice that like, oh, these joints are too good, so these dovetails are too good. This is probably made by a machine in the maybe even like the late 1800s as a knockoff of the thing that would have been 100 years older that you actually want.
Yes.
So it's a weird business.
It is, and actually. a wonderful, wonderful book, which neither of you have read, The Goldfinch.
No,
Donna
read it.
Tartt's latest book. Donna Tartt was famous for her first debut novel called The Secret History, being totally amazing, and it has a great opening sentence. I can't quite remember it verbatim, but it has something to do with like, the snow had been thawed for 6 weeks when we found Bunny's body. Or something like
So
that.
it's not the moon exploding, but close.
Hold on. It's a wonderful, wonderful coming of age story. But in it, the main character works in an antique shop for a while and talks about fake antiquing things. And one of the key techniques is to turn your vacuum in reverse and blow dust all over something.
It's not like we do that here all the time.
Oh, wait, but I do have this one thing as a tangent.
Absolutely not. No tangents on
Yes,
this podcast,
there's a tangent. I received a lovely letter from a man recently who said that he spent many nights with a good friend of his watching Mythbusters, and they were great fans, and his friend passed away, and he wanted to send me this box that his friend had had for decades, and as a thank you for the entertainment that Mythbusters had given them. And this box came, and it is absolutely hand-built by whoever used it, but with beautiful dovetails.
Like a toolbox?
No, just like a little, almost like a pencil box.
Oh, wow.
And just absolutely gorgeously done. And the dovetails are all slightly uneven.
Oh, that's the best.
One of those, yeah, just absolutely.
Jesse from Breaking Bad.
Handmade. Yes, exactly.
Very, very good. So speaking of books, we have unfinished business.
We do.
Yes.
We do have
More tangents?
I do have another tangent.
more.
I just
This
wanted
is
to say
unprecedented.
I came to the shop today on a new toy. I
yes.
showed it to you guys. I got a One Wheel last week from the guys from One Wheel.
We talked to them and rode at Maker Faire in 2014, I think. And I was very close to another man that day. He held my shoulders, I held his as we did the first ride. And then after like 2 minutes, I was kind of whizzing around the field at Maker Faire.
Yeah, and it's actually, so One Wheel, for those of you who haven't seen one, is basically a skateboard with a giant like 8-inch go-kart tire. Yeah, so it's like 5 inches
slick.
wide and 8 inches tall, a slick in the middle, and it self-bounces like a Segway. You do need a sense of balance to ride it. It's not instantaneous like a
One wheel.
But the thing I liked about it is it felt less like a skateboard, which I have no proficiency with.
They're terrifying.
And much more like a wakeboard or a snowboard where you're kind of gently carving, because the wheel's a little bit underinflated maybe, and you kind of rock from side to side.
It also means that this giant wheel also means that it takes obstacles beautifully. Like I've ridden over stones and pieces of wood and short curbs like an inch, and you just don't even feel it.
I assume those handicap ramps with like the texturing stuff, the bump,
feels
that if
a
you hit
little
on a
weird.
skateboard would be unpleasant, but okay with this.
Totally fine. And so I rode it around the mission here, and it's my new favorite auto transportation.
So
automatic transportation.
On the Norm tested the boosted board earlier this year or last year.
Last year.
How did you like that?
I love the boosted board.
You do?
Also can't ride skateboards, but that felt like the future.
I gotta try one of those.
Yeah. So the thing that I was bummed about that though is you use a remote control to control speed. So you have like a thing in your hand that you have to use, which both seem safer and less safe at the same time.
To be honest, that is the biggest learning curve on the One Wheel, is learning how to stop without any kind of control, just balance. And they have a method. It has a switch, a dead man switch. So it goes off the moment your foot is off the front pad.
And does it stop or coast?
Oh, no, it stops.
Okay.
Well, yeah, no, it stops, especially since you're leaning and you're balancing and it's accommodating for that. You stop instantly anyway, as I can attest to you from my aging body having withstood a bunch of bruises and knocks over the past week as I've been learning to ride the One Wheel.
It's as it is.
Luckily, we were out on Treasure Island on a big tarmac, so I had some space to do it.
Have you taken it someplace where there's dirt? Because like that's the place the boosted board breaks down. And I know you've taken your SBU out into the desert before.
Yeah.
I assume that the One Wheel with the big giant wheel and totally sealed body is probably going to do okay and everything, but like
it's
loose
made
sand.
for off-roading.
Yeah.
So we are actually going up to Gold Country. I'm not sure when this will air, but I'm heading up to Gold Country
later today.
Tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm heading up to Gold Country tonight, and I'm going to bring the skateboard. The One Wheel. The other thing I like about it is you can get 5 miles on a single charge. As far as I'm concerned, it's my last mile emergency vehicle in the Land Cruiser.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so if I need to get some fuel, I jump on that. And woo, road. I don't have. That's awesome.
We'll
That's
get you
rad.
a boosted, the test also. And we'll try it
Also,
out.
wait, another tangent even.
But wait, we're not. There's no real podcast here this week. It's just tangents all the way down.
How to do this quickly. Weird Al Yankovic was in town this weekend. He performed at the Masonic Hall.
Wow.
And since Weird and I know each other a little bit.
Do you call him Mr. Weird?
I call him Al.
Okay.
But I love the idea of Weird, it's Adam.
Adam, it's weird.
I called him up and he came by the cave here. We tweeted some photos. He put on that space helmet over there.
Nice.
And we hung out for a little while. And then I took my boys to see his show, which is fantastic.
Did he sit in the captain's chair?
He did sit in the captain's chair. I didn't take a picture of him in the captain's chair.
Oh, you got to take pictures of everybody in the chair.
I know, it's true. Yeah, he sat in the captain's chair for a while we talked. And then it turns out Weird has an SBU, which he loves.
I'm not that surprised.
Of course.
Self-balancing unicycle.
Yeah, it's the thing I tested last year on the site. That thing, I've never had such a varied reaction to any piece of technology I've ever tested. We haven't talked about it here.
You mean other people's reactions?
Other people's reaction.
Well, that's what I see. That's the thing. I can't ride it in public because it really is like it's over the top. Look at me.
Well, so like riding around
Last thing you need.
where our offices are south of Market, like I could ride it down to the grocery store down the street, no problem, because the sidewalks are relatively empty.
Yeah.
It doesn't go fast enough that you feel okay being in the bike lane ever.
Right.
But it was like I got high fives and stuff as I'm riding down the street, and then occasionally somebody would yell something obscene at you and be like, "Get the hell off the road, you got," and so it was right. Hipster. Look at that fucking hipster.
Lots of head shakes.
.com. A lot of stink eye, a lot of side eye, but it was fun. The thing that I love about all of that, the electronic, the Verge calls them rideables, but I think that's a kind of weird name.
Rideables sounds pretty good.
I love it. They feel it feels almost like I imagine riding the conveyor belt and the Jetsons would, right? It feels effortless because after you internalize controls, you just kind of think the thing that you want to do, and then it happens.
And I'm a very experienced unicycle rider. I can go up and down stairs and juggle on it and everything. And I love the SBU. I think the one wheel gives me even more of that. I'm looking at a place and I am heading over there now.
Yep.
The like you said, thought-driven movement, which is uncanny. One of the other advantages, the last thing I'll say about this, is when you ride it, you automatically go into a skateboard slouch, which for me is sort of like the ultimate in cool. And I never thought, close to 50, that I'd ever get to enjoy a skateboard slouch.
I mean, who would think that you would ever be cool, Adam?
Who would have imagined? It's very exciting. I thought those days were long past.
It's the dream of Dean Kamen with the Segway.
You mean Ginger?
Yes, the Segway, the last mile of transportation, except it's not one device, it's like 5 now.
The Segway is?
No, in terms of like everyone,
it's all
different
of
types
these,
of
yeah.
I got to
rideables.
try one of those boards.
Yes, well, I know I have an email to the founder, and we'll get you.
Let's get
We'll
one
get you
over
one to
here.
try.
I'm going
We'll
to ride
test
it
them.
around.
We'll bring Jeremy over. We'll race. You guys can race.
That sounds fabulous.
He's put on weight since riding his.
Yeah. Having easy last mile.
It gets you out more, but not necessarily.
You know, my director, Steve, and I were talking about this last week, that someday I'll be done making Mythbusters, and I think one of the first things that's going to happen is I'm going to get fat. Because on Mythbusters, I am out and in the field 3 days a week, rushing around and doing stuff every week, 40 weeks a year.
It's amazing the difference between just like walking and standing versus sitting at a desk all day.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to, I don't know, take up hiking the moment we're done. I don't, like...
Just get a giant dog. Something that you have to go out and run 5 miles a day. It'll work itself out.
Exactly.
Should we... I feel like we've missed the window on talking about the other thing we're going to talk about
Let's
today.
finish
But
Seveneves.
Let's do the Seveneves wrap.
Okay,
Yes.
we're going to finish Seveneves.
So from this point on, spoilers abound.
Spoilers abound. Also, I really appreciate, I read the comment on Tested where someone, or maybe someone tweeted to me, the third time Will and Adam said, don't listen any further if you don't want to spoiled. They actually, I think it was a she actually turned the podcast off at that point. Thank you. That is exactly how this works. I didn't want to spoil what Seveneves is about. So if you're going to continue to listen to this and you want to read actually, I'll just say this. If you want to read Seveneves, don't listen to anything
listening.
we're about to say.
We don't want you to listen anymore.
We want you to stop. We've given you some fun front end stuff.
Go outside. Go for a walk.
Go outside. Go read Seveneves. Come back and listen to this because Will and I covered parts 1 and 2 of Seveneves, which take place on Earth and then on the International Space Station, or ISI as it was. And the third part of this book, and this is a spoiler alert, so you can stop listening right now.
Just bye. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.
Next week. The third part takes place on Earth.
5,000 years in the future.
5,000 years
after the hard rain.
After you cried.
After
oh my God! Did you not cry?
I saw it coming.
You saw it coming?
I saw it coming once they jumped to 2 years it took to do the maneuver, and it's only like 40 people, or a dozen people left.
You figured out that Seveneves was going to be 7
and I started counting. How many?
But for me, the crying started with there are 40 people left. Right, out of all of what we built.
For me, it started with that there were 7, and I like just the reveal that,
definitely chills. Less so crying, but the crying moment is the final walk of Doob and Dinah on
the outside of the cradle.
On the outside of the cradle.
Beautiful.
And then they talk about how in the future the kids, the future generations will develop, and then he came back and he died. And that's
really, really beautiful. And I love the way that with the various characters like Tavis and the Doob, that he shows how different people are affected by their notoriety and the power that they have by communication.
That hits right at home.
Who is he supposed to be?
Tavis?
Yes.
Is Tavis the bad blogger?
He's the bad blogger. Who is he supposed to be?
He's Drudge or Breitbart.
In my mind, he looks a lot like John Stossel or Geraldo Rivera.
Oh, see, I thought Breitbart or one of those guys was where I initially went.
He was Doob's friend in the beginning.
Yeah,
so if you think of Doob as
Breitbart, I wasn't thinking that he was politically like a schmuck. I was just thinking of him as someone who was too happy at the echo chamber of his own voice to be a reliable.
Maybe it's not based on anyone.
I don't think we can say who those people are without getting in trouble.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Doob is like Neil deGrasse Tyson, effectively.
Yes.
Yeah, no doubt.
No doubt, and maybe loosely based on, or just an institutionalized communicator.
Neil deGrasse Tyson is the archetype that started with Carl Sagan, right? The science communicator.
Right. Yes, and then maybe the Tav is supposed to be, Stevenson's view of like what blogging and popular science has become in the blogosphere.
I felt like that entire arc. We didn't talk about this when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but I felt like the Tavis arc and the rise of the social network in the capsules in the cloud was a very strong indictment of modern social media and the kind of Gawker style blog that has developed over the last 20 years.
Well, again, especially the pointless. I mean, Neil makes it really clear, his politics on the matter, the pointless echo chamber of opinion movement that Julia engenders the moment she arrives.
And how effective it is.
And how effective and poisonous it is.
It's been a while since I read this. Aida? Was she the Aida? Like her, I thought even worse than Julia was the Aida character. Her manipulation of the willful ignorance. We did talk about this a little bit, like the rise of modern American conservatism.
And it was fascinating to me as they went 5,000 years in the future that you had a culture built on a suspicious approach to that type of some healthy.
It was racism.
Suspicion. Yeah,
I mean, it was. Look, it was unabashed racism. Yeah. These people are opportunists. These people help everyone. These people, and that's like I found that part. Well, first off, I loved the idea that they had spent a significant portion of the last 5,000 years blasting comets back onto the surface and doing things, reseeding it to make the Earth rehabitable, doing these massive engineering projects on a multi-generational scale.
And if you're going to jump 5,000 years in the future, you're going to wonder, well, how did these things progress? At what point do they reach the kind of point of no return of the ring around Earth? Because when they jump 5,000 years in the future, humanity is still living 99.9% of it in space in a ring that
billions and
millions,
billions of people. Billions of people.
They turned what used to be the moon into a ring of connected habitats around the
From a structural standpoint, when you have a third of the book set basically, which has to serve the purpose of one being an epilogue, and two, it could be its own book, and that's where you get a lot of the world building,
and it could be the harbinger of the next set of books.
Exactly, because the book at the end doesn't have a finite conclusion.
No,
it could lead forward.
Well, nor does it even wrap up all the threads.
Doesn't wrap up all the threads. The first 2 parts of the book, you have this tense feeling of, does humanity make it? Does he make it? Do we make it? And it's a disaster novel, but it's an optimistic disaster novel, as Neil Stephenson says, because it's an optimist.
Oh, I mean, the most optimistic disaster novel ever written, actually, because of the big reveal at the end.
Yes, and when you think of it, the reveal being 5,000 years later, humanity is won. If we have survived for 5,000 years and repopulated to a point, any measure, if you look, we've had more than our current civilization have. We're talking about 3000 BC to 2000 AD now. It could have ended just there. We made it. We did.
Yeah.
And now just looking forward, and the consequences is what the whole third part is. The consequences not only in the personalities and humanity as multiple races, but from a technological standpoint, what does, instead of going through an Earth-based development and evolution of how we are, we grow technologically, how that world in the future grew over 5,000 years from a space base, from from mechanical base engineering perspective.
Well, but I mean,
that's all the fun part.
It sets the stage for an even greater conflict. Because I think my thought at the end of this was that the differences in the Seveneves races, the races that spawned from the 7 characters at the end of part 2, was that the kind of fascist upraising of Dinah's father's clan that dug in under the mountains and had to take extreme measures when they ran out of things like birth control, right? Like they became essentially a fascist state, and at the same time we know nothing about Ivy's husband's pingers who adapted to live under the ocean, and
that's the big twist.
In the depths of the trench. And he also left the Martian thread hanging.
The Martian thread is still hanging out there.
I think they're dead.
But for the most part, all 3 attempts to save humanity worked.
Well, the 3 that we know,
and that's the optimistic.
And that is what's crazy.
The endurance. We will change the way we live. The way we'll go to these extreme lengths, but we can make it. Which leads you to think, man, if that was going to happen now, I don't think we would like. It was so optimistic. The 2 years it took in the first half of the book
of throwing up
the capsules and humanity basically uniting all the engineers and all the scientists, all the private companies, all these lucky things happening.
Yeah,
we're not at a point in real life where if that was happening, if the moon blew up and we had 2 years ago, I don't think we could do it.
We talked about it a little bit. I don't know if you listened to the podcast, but did you feel like I really left the end of part 1 thinking that the effort to build the ark, the cloud ark, was a panacea to keep the people on the ground from revolting, to keep chaos at bay as long as possible.
To give people something to do and to something to focus on.
You have to have hope,
which has the added advantage of maybe working.
Yeah.
Which is exactly how it kind of worked out, because yes, it was a panacea. I mean, he wrote it in that the governments of the world did sort of join together and like, yeah, this is better than the alternative, which is we all just sit around twiddling our thumbs.
Or everybody starts murdering everybody.
So without going to all the specific plot points, what were the things you liked and disliked about the third part of the book?
So I thought that the third part of the book could have easily been an Arthur Clarke style 2001 epilogue, at 5,000 years in the future. And then it opens with a descendant of Dinah stepping out of the cradle onto the new primordial Earth, and seeing a cheetah eat a lion or something, a lion eat a elk or something, and then close. I understand why I think. I got the strong feeling reading the third part. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I got the strong feeling reading the third part that Neil Stephenson had a strong vision for what he wanted that to be.
Oh, I think so too, especially when you read the interviews and see that, and we talked about this on the podcast, that Neil had developed this as a video game, as a television series, as a film. And it was I think that when you talk about developing that stuff, there's a lot to develop in the first 2 parts, but the third is where I think a lot of his
world building,
exciting passion went into, and it's sort of arbitrary where you stop that. So I found the set of reveals about the new world to be thrilling. I really liked the opening of the descendant of Dinah flying in the ultralight and riding the drafts. Again, the deep dive into a technology that almost exists now, that if given enough oxygen could burn more brightly. That is,
or necessity.
Or necessity, exactly. Right. And then finding out the descendants of the seven, the fractionalization of the ring of the population, the politics, the sexual politics. All of that I thought was sophisticated and wonderful to read. Like, I just kept on plowing through it at that point.
It was the kind of far future stuff that he hasn't traditionally done outside of an Anthem.
Structurally, the third is less tense than the first two. It's less of this deadline going, counting down of
Ticking
people.
Clock of the first two is exhausting.
But it takes also this form of a very traditional adventure story of the gathering of your parties, the introduction of who these members
fellowship
are.
of the ring.
Exactly, it's very fellowship-like.
Yeah.
And you use that as a way to tell the world. But my favorite parts were then recollecting and filling in the gaps of the 5,000 years, using the videotapes of like, oh, it is your Dinah day, your Eve day, and so we'll watch the videos, and this is a big lesson, and that fills up that first 200 years after the end of the first two books that we don't get.
Yeah.
Well, just the thought that they had a record, or at least even a partial record of, hey, here's what the last 5,000 years were like. I mean, you assume that going forward, we're going to have a record of everything, right? We're making more data every year than we made in all of human history before that. And that's presumably going to continue for at least a while.
And they said they ran out of tape.
Yeah.
They ran out of storage space.
Well, and then the hard drives start failing and, the nothing that we build. This is, occasionally we get talked to folks who work at Long now on the 10,000 year clock. And like, when people build something to last for a long time now, it lasts for 20 years or 100 years. Thinking about stuff on the scale of 5 millennia is terrifying. Frankly, it's beyond our ability to comprehend. So I really I found the book wonderful. I hope that there's a TV series or something that continues.
I think it would be like a movie, a 3 movie. But even as a movie, the tone and what the first two books is this combination of Interstellar and Gravity and The Martian. It's so tonally different than the third book. It's the third part of the book that to make that into some type of popular media would be very difficult.
Well, they even changed you have to, but that third book wouldn't have worked if he hadn't earned it with the first two parts. That's the thing. Yeah. So like, I don't know. I would love to see more of the world of Seveneves.
I would love to see. I'd love to see it as a TV series. I'd love to see it as a game. I recognize that it was stylistically radically different. I wanted to know more about the art. Like, I've often said that theater is the first art form that will survive an apocalypse, that will come back after an apocalypse.
Well, you've seen The Postman.
No, I haven't seen The Postman.
Oh, you should watch The Postman.
But I haven't seen it.
Well, there's a theater bit in the short story too, right?
There's a theater bit in the Dragon one. Oh God, the bad Matthew McConaughey Christian Bale.
Rain of Fire.
Rain of Fire.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's great. They act out Star Wars.
Yeah,
for the kids.
Yes.
Pause just for a second.
Okay. I don't remember what we were talking about though.
We were talking about Seveneves.
The Seveneves,
the third part.
The third part being so stylistically different.
Art.
Oh, right. Theater is the first thing that comes back after the apocalypse.
Right. And I really believe, and when I say theater, I don't mean putting on full costumes and doing a dance routine, but I mean telling each other stories and making those stories have a greater impact. The development of storytelling. Theater is just the natural extension of storytelling, as film is, as any other art form is. And I would be interested to see what kind of art would survive after 5,000 years, what it would look like, what it would feel
and how storytelling informs the culture.
Exactly.
Especially if you're going to bring in 3 different types of culture: space, ground, and sea. It really felt like the ground, the Rufus people and the Pingers were the ones who had the stories actually define their culture most.
Right. Interesting. You're right, because they had a singular culture.
Right.
Yes, where especially the sea people, because their connection is that one are the cell phone photos, and that's something that could only be told over time, and that's what they recognize, like the fables from 5,000 years ago.
But also the Pingers wouldn't, if they evolved to live in the water, they lose the ability to write. So their tradition becomes oral at that point, I would think.
Yes, maybe.
I mean, unless they're carrying
fun world
iPads.
building.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I think my only problem structurally, and I love everything in this book, is I wish the third part was just a separate book, that he didn't feel bound by the fact that he needed to put everything.
But I didn't want to end.
Yeah, you
after
couldn't
the
have ended
second
there.
part.
I think that would have been a fine conclusion.
I needed it. I needed that denouement. I needed that come down.
You did? Oh.
Dramatically.
If you ever read 2001, so the spoilers for 2001 here.
Spoiler alert. Are you still listening?
Is this on? Is anybody here? At the end of 2001, it basically, 2001, the novel ends with, I think, because the novel's about Saturn, not Jupiter, but the gist is the same, right?
Yeah.
The monoliths form, they add mass to the planet, it collapses into a star. The star doesn't have enough fuel to burn for the billions of years that a normal G-class star like we have does. But it fast forwards an indeterminate, actually, it's a determinate period of time that I don't recall in the future to when that light goes out, when that star burns out.
Yeah.
So you have the start and the end of that star, and that's that. Then the book ends, and it's I like it. It is profoundly unsatisfying,
right?
In a way that I thought this wasn't. Like, I thought this was a very satisfying way to end this book. And
but I agree with you.
Note.
I want more.
Yeah.
I want more of that third world. I want the third world, the third part of the book. I want sequels. Yes. And I love the idea that it could potentially become a TV series. I like this universe so much. I would take spin-off books and spin-off games. I mean, I'm kind of really fascinated
Keep it coming.
by it.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I love the very X-Men style of the third part of the book with the Doc Who in his wheelchair, and you have the beast-like Bard.
Yes.
And
Right, and the ones who must fight.
Yes.
And
that's the way to
Thor's
describe.
hammer.
Yes.
How about Thor's hammer as a piece of engineering?
Yes.
Wait, what?
The flipping
tube, right.
The flipping tube that then just puts a laser down. You stand underneath it, and it just scoops you up.
Yeah.
It's all just mechanical based.
And that was my favorite part of the third part of the book, is all of the if you have infinite mass in orbit and iron and nickel, and you're very rich in those things that are going to be hard for, say, people under the sea to get to, like, how do you adjust your technology
without rocket fuel,
without having a lot of rocket fuel, without having a lot of fossil fuels and consumables? How does it work? And it's fascinating.
I'm also there. Am I right that there's a book of illustrations inspired by the book?
I didn't know that.
I only know in the book, the first and last pages, there's one, Weta did drawings of Izzy and drawing of the cradle.
But the cradle and Izzy are beautiful.
These are Weta artists, but I don't think there's any other illustrations.
Are there prints of those you can buy?
I looked and they're not. I wanted the Izzy one real bad.
The cradle, the concept of the cradle as a thing that dangles from orbit and has docking stations around the globe, that there's enough slack on this, unbelievably long, unbelievably strong tether that you can just stay there for a couple of days and then get lifted out and move on.
Yeah.
It's the most counterintuitive, but the best space elevator I've ever heard of.
I agree. And, I love that the space elevator itself has its own culture separate from the ring and from Earth.
Right.
That it's got its own sort of thing. And it's like, he gives it sort of maybe the most unique culture.
It's the melting pot.
Yeah. Right. It's Istanbul. It's a road on the spice route. Right.
Wow. Yeah, it's fantastic.
We could talk indefinitely, but I think unless
we'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And for people who are still reading the book or just finishing it,
you shouldn't be listening to this.
You shouldn't be listening. But when you finish the book, you can Google, Seveneves illustrations and find the drawings. And people have done fan drawings as well of what they think.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
The different aspects of the future looks like.
So the one thing that I thought was interesting that he didn't get into at all is the concept of a multi-generation project, right? When you're talking about something that takes 5,000 years, you're looking at 50 or 60 generations or more of people who are presumably going to live in really difficult circumstances, no hope of ever ending those circumstances, and they're literally working for something that's going to take generations and generations and generations down the road.
Right.
He labels them as phases.
And it's interesting that even as factions that don't get along, they're able to prioritize to get along and basically
For survival.
for survival.
Well, that was the thing that I think the distilling down to 7 people and then coming back from was necessary, because I think in his idea, like, you like to think that in a real world situation like this, the people that remain would be able to be decent and civil and work well enough together that humanity in some form would survive.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't know if you guys had this experience, but I knew the 2 spoilers I knew before going into the book was that the moon blows up, which is in the first sentence. And then the book spans 5,000 years, which isn't in the first sentence. But I knew that. So I kept finding myself reading part 2, wondering how long is part 2 going to be? When I first started part 2, I thought, this is going to be pretty short. We're going to get there pretty quickly.
I thought part 2 would span 5,000 years.
Right. Yes, it wouldn't be a jump, and the fact that it's a jump.
I sort of knew a jump was coming, but I thought it was coming earlier. I thought it was coming a lot earlier. I didn't realize all the development that would happen with the swarm and with Julia and the politics.
See, I didn't think there would be any of that stuff. That was my least favorite part of the book, for what it's worth.
I found it so stressful.
Cast your Seveneves.
Awful.
Let's finish this. Cast it. I mean, when you're reading it and you're listening to audiobook.
Well, Julia Louis-Dreyfus is the president.
I had Diane Lane.
No,
Diane Lane.
God, no.
Evil Julia Louis-Dreyfus?
No, I actually think of her as heavier than that. I think of Julia as a more heavy set woman, I
had Cherry Jones from 24.
Cherry Jones would be brilliant
Who's
because
Cherry Jones?
she played the president in 24. Also,
Cherry Jones would be absolutely perfect. Cherry Jones is she is partners with the woman from Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, the female star. She's also a longtime muse and a cast member of John Patrick Shanley's plays. I saw her here in San Francisco in Proof. But she'd be wonderful. That's perfect.
I don't know if you could get 7 women working in Hollywood today.
Well, okay, Ivy is, I'm just going to say Ivy is Lucy Liu. It's how I saw her the entire time. I think she's the right age now and the right temperament. I saw Dinah as Samantha Morton.
Samantha Morton?
I see her as a little more forthright than Samantha Morton reminds me of being, or it seems to be to me.
I would have said Kate Mara, but she's already in The Martian, and I didn't want to double up.
Yeah, Kate Mara is actually perfect. I mean, sort of a younger Sandra Bullock, that kind of.
She needs to be a little like hands dirty though.
Marcus,
I wouldn't say Sandra Bullock is.
I saw as
Marcus from part 3.
Marcus from part 2, the Dinah's.
Okay.
The hero, the one who sacrifices himself as Peter Sarsgaard.
Well, you guys did a lot more thinking about this than I did.
Norm did a lot. This is Norm's game while he reads books.
I love this game.
Oh, then I have a question for you after this podcast.
Okay.
Oh, I'm doing that thing again.
No, that's me. So people always ask for book recommendations at the end of these.
I will give one more casting thing, and I'll shut up. Tekka Gwendolyn Christie.
Is Tekka the Russian?
Yes.
Gwendolyn Christie. Who's that?
She's in Game of Thrones, and she's going to be in a new Star Wars movie.
Oh, she's Brienne of Tarth.
She's Brienne of Tarth.
Yes.
Yes.
I can see that.
Oh, okay.
That's the last thing I'll say. Sorry.
All right.
People always ask for book recommendations. I've read a couple of things recently that were really good and definitely worth reading. I don't think we're going to talk about them. Yeah.
You and I both read Ta-Nehisi Coates' book, Between the World and Me.
It's unbelievable, and I think everyone should read it, probably.
It should be required reading. It's really, really intense. Actually, both of his books are amazing. I'm starting the other one as well. He's an incredible writer, and he's of our age. He's a little bit younger than us, I think.
Maybe we'll split the difference. Thank you, sir.
Are you saying I'm not as old as you, Savage?
I wasn't saying that, but you did.
Yeah, Ta-Nehisi Coates, absolutely incredible. Really, really important.
It's a heavy book. It is not speculative science fiction.
No.
The other book I read while I was on vacation is Aurora by Kim Stanley Robinson. It is about life on a generation ship traveling between stars at a fraction of the speed of light, and what it is like to live in the middle of a multi-generational project. And it's an interesting take.
I want to talk about this next week. I read I'm new to John Scalzi.
Oh, you have a lot of good stuff to
I
read.
do, because I read Red Shirts, which I freaking loved, and I want to talk about it next
Hey,
week.
let's just announce it now. It's homework assignment.
Homework assignment, read Red
It's
Shirts,
short.
because we're
It's
going
like
to talk
Red
about
Shirts.
it.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's 180 pages. You'll blow through that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also read Locked In, which is a terrific Michael
yeah.
Crichton-style thriller.
Yeah.
And I also read Old Man's War, which I loved the shit out of.
Oh, Old Man's War is delightful.
Oh, it's wonderful,
It is-
wonderful.
It's what I want out of space opera.
We actually narrowly missed having Scalzi on this podcast because he was in San Francisco recently, but because of various scheduling stuff and family stuff, I had to cancel, unfortunately. But we will bring him back.
The other thing that he wrote that I absolutely love is called The Android's Dream. And
Yes,
it's
I have
about-
that. That's on my next
It
one.
is one of my favorite science fiction books of the 2000s. So highly recommended.
And there are
Scalzi's great all the
audiobooks
way
for
around.
most of these.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Yes.
I would love to record the audio for an audiobook.
You should just do it.
We have everything you need to do.
Right. All we need is we are currently
Yes.
using everything we
I can
need.
master that for you, sir.
Pass a book back and forth. But
you
next
go.
week we'll be back and let's talk about Red Shirts.
Absolutely.
See you guys then.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't forget, with Skillshare, you can explore thousands of online classes in design, photography, business, and more. Learn from the world's best teachers on your own schedule and join a learning community of over 1 million creators. With real projects and feedback from the Skillshare community, it's like being in a real class, but on your own time. Classes can even be watched offline with Skillshare's mobile apps on both Apple and Android devices. Go to Skillshare.com and get 3 free months with the discount code Untitled at checkout for new customers. Thanks Skillshare for your support of this podcast, and thank you guys for watching.
Bye.